been going flat out and ended with history taking. And that's where we'll end today, is taking a history. And you have the expanded history in your notebook. And one of the things we want you to do as you go through that history is to look at the identity messages. Did you see how Ray and I were doing that? That we found identity messages. And so when I'm taking a history, you can go through there and ask those questions. And whenever I hear something that's an identity message, I just put a little IDM around it. Starting on page 179, it's going to tell you, just read the instructions again, of looking for identity messages. You've watched Ray and I do that. The identity that it gave people and the idols. And we're putting together the circuit diagram. And so all you've got to do is read that page and then start asking the questions. Again, I would ask you to do the extended history and go through all the questions with a person, because you're doing long-term discipleship. And you also have there the shortened version that gives you the questions that I was asking. Just those 5 to 7 questions that we'll ask. A couple of things, remembering and taking a history. It's a privilege to take anybody's history. I've only lived one life, and I get to live your life and be a part of that life. And that has always been something that's been very important and very significant to me, just to be able to do that. I still enjoy it today. I like doing it. You've only lived one life, and you get to live others' lives. A history is a very, very precious thing to you, and it's what God has used in your life. And never minimize that while you're sharing with someone and getting to get the information. And remember what it's like for you to be in a position of need. One time I was at Ray's house, and we'd been going flat out. And finally I had one night with his family, one night to sit down and have dinner. And a pastor came, and Ray said, "The pastor really wants to talk to you." And I said, "Brother, I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to see your family. That's why I'm here." And he said, "Would you just go down and just say hello to him?" I went down, I looked at him in the chair, and I could see Mike there. Defeated, discouraged, not knowing where to go, in the world without a hope, yet Christ in him. And Ray and I started sharing. Well, we came out of the basement 3 hours later. And we were laughing and excited because we got to share Christ with him. I always see myself in that person. And that's probably one of the things that nearly killed me over the years. Because I can remember when I was struggling and I had questions, and the conference speaker was there and he gave a few ideas, but he never had time to talk to anyone. And so I'll almost always take the time, if I can, to see the one more person, the one more person, the one more person. And the other thing is, remember how vulnerable a person feels when they're sitting there with you. Now, how much do you women enjoy a breast exam with a male doctor? And how much do you fellas like having your prostate checked? I don't like being in those positions at all. And it's very, very uncomfortable, and you feel completely vulnerable. Remember that when people are talking to you, that's how they feel. And you might have done this 1,000 times, but it's the first time they've done it. And they don't know what to expect. They don't know that you're a safe person. They don't know that there's any hope. And you'll see that as you begin to share with them, and it'll come out. I'm not going to have a long lecture on listening skills and counseling dynamics and all that, because if you couldn't do those things, you wouldn't be here. And that stuff is fluff to fill a counseling program anyway, and to give people something to do, to stretch out a 2-week program into a 3-year program. If you can't listen, if you don't like people, why are you here? And so I know that all of you know how to do that. And that's not something that you're going to teach anyway. If you don't like people, you just don't like them. The other thing is, nobody is a widget for you, are they? They're just something to get through, to get on to the next one, the next one, the next one. Hannah was sharing with me that she'd talked to her counselor quite a bit, and then she'd gone back, moved away and gone back, and wanted to just check in with her and say hi, and went to her house and visited her, and then realized the woman was really expecting to get paid for that visit. Oh. Well, that's not what it's all about. That's not why we're in it. We're not in it for that reason. I was in a counseling conference, and they talked to us about history taking. And one of the fellows said, "Remember this, just remember this. Whenever you're dealing with people, listen to their problems, give them 50 minutes, and then get out of there and get it out of your head and forget them." And these were Christians. I raised my hand and I said, listen, the day I can do that, you'll know, because I won't be in this ministry anymore. And I said to the fellow, brother, if your son was struggling with homosexuality and came to me and told me that, he wouldn't get 50 minutes and then be washed out of my head. I don't know how long I'd be with him. I don't know when I'd talk to him again. And here's the thing I've discovered. I can carry anything if he carries me. Well, some things you just speak to hear yourself. But I always keep that in mind, that for me, a history, being involved in your life, sharing with me, this is ministry together. And you're not a widget. You're not somebody that you just get done with and you move on with them. People don't listen because they don't know that you care. We build relationships, and they're not phony relationships. I've got a lot of other things I could be doing other than counseling. I'm not sitting there because I want to crank through this and you're just a non-human to me. I really want the relationship. We want to get in your shoes. And this too is avoid treating a label and not the person. Everything we've done in looking at who you are, how your inner life was developed, what your personality is so I can deal with your uniqueness and I'm not labeling you. I don't like labels because once you have a label, then people just treat the label and not the person. And some labels are so broad, and they have to be for insurance, but bipolar, manic, depressive, they'd probably hit everyone in this room. And so that's just really broad, and I don't want to treat the label, I want to treat the person. Always be able to move where God is moving as you're going through the counseling sessions. We have a plan and a program. We have a starting point. We have something we want to get done. We want to get you through these 5 sections, and we want you to see your inner life. But if the Holy Spirit stops you and it goes in another direction, go with Him. Because God's meeting that point of need. And so be flexible in that. And there'll be days when you finish up with someone and you say, I was not able to get everything done that I wanted to get done. Well, that's all right, because you moved exactly where God wanted you to go. And again, we have an order, but our order isn't always God's order. All we want to do is have a framework and some place to start, so we just don't sit there saying, talk about problems. Talk about anger. We're not doing that. We do want to go somewhere. Good counseling is knowing when not to counsel. Sometimes just be quiet. And sometimes there's nothing to say. So I want you to go through the history taking. You sit down with a person. You start asking the questions. And we've done enough work now that you'll begin to see identity messages. You ask, how did that make you feel? That's your identity. Well, then how did you cope with it? All that's written in the notebook, and you go through that. Start taking the long histories and just see where God takes you. You'll be able to move right along with all of this. So we're taking the history again, and what we want to understand is the development of the inner and the outer life. The identity messages, the identity, how we try to change and cope and cover up. Then we go ahead and fill this diagram in for the person. And then we talk about what it means to have an exchange life. That God's solution isn't to improve, but to remove. We've worked on it enough. I'll remind you of this. You're the perfect person for the job because you're the only one there. And isn't it amazing how God brings people together and how He'll bring you together with others? It is a miracle that I know everyone in this room. It's just a complete miracle when I think of the history and the story. Ann went to high school with my wife. Grade school. And I would hear about Ann when Betty and I got married. And who is Ann? Ann's here today. Isn't that amazing? I remember when I was 20 in Denver for a conference, Campus Crusade for Christ. And I was walking down the street. And this fellow comes walking toward me, and the Lord spoke to me and said, give him your money. And I had about $130 in my pocket, enough money to get home. And I just kept walking. No, I'm not giving my money. I got to get home. I'm in Denver. I live in Kansas. And I kept walking. The Lord said, give him your money. Well, how much? Give him all your money. All my money? And so I stopped the fellow and said, I want to talk to you about Jesus. I didn't tell him I was giving him my money. And he says, listen, brother, that's the topic I love more than any other. But he said, here's the thing, I'm in a hurry. I've been unemployed. I can't find a job. It's Christmas time. I was at the Salvation Army. They don't have any food there. And he said, I'm just trying to find something to do to get home with food for Christmas. And he said, what I need you to do for me is pray for me, because God will meet all my needs. And I just stared at him and said, here. And I gave him my $130, and he grabbed me and he started weeping, and he held on to me and held on to me. But the thing that amazed me about that is God knew the day that I would be in Denver, and the hour he would be looking, and the street we would be on, and the moment that we would meet, and I could meet a need in him. This counseling ministry is no different than that. That is how it works. And so when I see that, I realize that this is a ministry that I cannot fail at. I won't fail. Let every word fall out of your mouth, mess the whole thing up, get the diagram wrong, take the history wrong, and in the end, when you've said this, well, you know, in the end, what I'm really trying to say is you got Christ on this hand and trouble here, and when trouble's your focus, you don't have any hope, and when Christ is your focus, you have hope, and right now, I'm getting my eyes on him, so I have some hope. Do you know you've done more than 100, you've done 99%. You've done better than anybody else. You've done better than the trained counselors and the psychologists. You've done a lot better than that. Yeah, mo better. And remember, God's always more concerned for you than he is the ministry. That in this ministry is a ministry where you grow. I appreciate this ministry because it's been my place of growth with people. And somebody asked me, how much did that diagram cost? And I said, nearly a lady's life. Because all of these diagrams were developed in counseling sessions. And I said, oh, that lady almost committed suicide. And I said, I was able to draw this out as God gave me revelation for her. And I said, that diagram was not cheap. That cost a life almost. And these diagrams have come out of people's sweat and blood and torment and what's gone on in their lives. They're very, very valuable pieces of paper. And God has ministered to me. It's been my place of ministry. You don't have to create hearts, you reveal them. You're not Adam and Eve standing in the garden creating things, you're revealing things. And so the thing is, you pass the metal detector over the sand, it reveals the gold. You bring the message of Christ in you, the hope of glory, and see what floats up. But that's all we have to offer. Go wherever you want and you'll get what you pay for. Come here and you'll get what he paid for. Mm. And that's all we're offering is what he paid for and the revelation of your heart to show you, to let you see that. Never abort your uniqueness. So you see that here? I'm not Ray and that's okay. I'm not Ray and that's okay. I'm not Mike and that's okay. You're who you are and God wants to express himself through that.